Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. So, we're going through my top 10 video game consoles of all time. Now, these aren't the best consoles in the world, nor will they ever be the best consoles in the world. To some people, they are. This list is going to be extremely redundant, but okay, let's get started. Number 10, PlayStation 1. You're probably thinking like, yeah, that deserves to be in like the number 5 or 4 spot. Let me explain. The original PlayStation released in 1994 in Japan and 95 everywhere else. It launched with 10 great games, but 2 or 3 of the greatest games that people bought for the system was Rayman, Ridge Racer, and NBA Jam. Then they started releasing better release games like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Gex, Croc, Tekken, Street Fighter, WWF. There were just so many great games that were released on the PlayStation. Now, there is a reason why it's number 10. Here's the thing. 1, you can play PlayStation pretty much on any system. You can play it on the PS1, PS2, PS3, PS Vita, PSP. There's 5 different systems you can really play PlayStation on, and it's easy to emulate. I'm not no emulation type person. I don't do piracy, so that's out of the question right there. But the PlayStation can be emulated on any type of hardware. It can even be emulated on the original Xbox. That's just how it is. The thing about it is, though, there's a lot of great games, and then the PlayStation has a lot of shovelware. I also forgot to add in Final Fantasy. I don't know why. But it has a lot of shovelware. And that's one of my reasons why it's at number 10. Is because of all the shovelware. And then the fact that it only has 2 controller ports, it only has 15 slots for memory cards, and it does not have DVD support, which it really didn't at that time. It had CD support, which was okay. All right. Number 9, Nintendo 64. Now, as my childhood system, that was the system that I played. Okay. I remember playing this system first. Okay, I do remember playing it. It's probably my first system I've ever played. I think it is. I'm pretty sure besides Super Nintendo, but I'm pretty sure N64 is my first ever system I played. I remember playing Super Mario 64 back in the day. I feel old. I'm only 25, but I feel old. I remember when I was playing this 20 years ago at 5 years old, and I've been beating Super Mario 64 almost every single day, and I loved it. I loved it so much. And there's been a lot of flaws with the system. I thought it was the best system in the world. And it's one of the best systems, don't get me wrong. It's not the best, though. Some people would consider it the best, but it's not. So, with the N64, the good things about it, Mario games, Zelda games, Kirby, good second-party games, Donkey Kong 64, Diddy Kong Racing, GoldenEye 007, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Jet Force Gemini, Blast Corps, Conker's Bad Fur Day, for Christ's sake. That's a great game. It had Ocarina of Time on there, Majora's Mask, Super Smash Bros. Started on the system. They had Mario Kart 64, the first ever 3D Mario Kart game, and Super Mario 64, the first ever Super Mario 3D game. It was a great platform, and it was the most powerful platform of the 5th generation. But here's the one thing about the N64 that people do know, is that there's not that many games on the system. Sorry, guys, my foot. There's not that many games on the system. It only has about almost close to 400 games, but almost every single game in that system lineup is critically acclaimed. Almost all of them are critically acclaimed. There's a few exceptions. There's probably maybe about 30 games on there that are nothing but shovelware. And then all the rest are great. But here's one of my reasons why some people chose PlayStation or Sega Saturn over the N64. Cartridge limitations. You could not store as much memory on those cartridges as you can store on a CD. And that was one major flaw. So, for instance, Final Fantasy VII, when Square Enix was going to make it for Nintendo, they skipped Nintendo and they went right to Sony, and then it sold millions of copies. If Nintendo would have done discs, it would have been a whole of a lot better. It would be a whole lot better. The other bad thing about the system is the fact of the controllers, and that is mainly because of the control stick. The control stick can break extremely easy. It's not a good controller. Well, to me, it's actually not a bad controller. It's not a bad controller, but it's not a good one either. It's probably not the best controller Nintendo's ever made. It definitely isn't. So, but it has a lot of great memorable games up on there, and that's one of the main reasons why it's at number 9. All right, number 8, PlayStation 2. Okay. Some of you are really going to get mad about this, and I can already tell. Let me explain. Technically, in a childhood, I never owned an original PlayStation, and I never owned a PlayStation 2. My parents did. They owned a PlayStation 2, but I never owned one as a child. We were all Nintendo. Well, with the PlayStation 2 coming into play, there's a lot of great games on PlayStation 2 that you don't find on any other systems, like Final Fantasy X. Well, now you do. Final Fantasy X, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, God of War. Yeah, those are some franchises. Katamari Damacy, there's another one. Forgot to add that in there. There's a lot of third-party games on the system that you just really don't find. Like I said, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy 13. Final Fantasy 10-2, Final Fantasy 12. There's just even more games than that. It's just there's some of them I just don't know by heart. There's a lot of great games up on the system, like SSX, Time Splitters, and it's just so many other great games. Soul Calibur, Tekken, Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, Mortal Kombat, Burnout. Oh boy, it's just so many great games. But that's just the one thing about the PlayStation 2 that I like. Now, here are some things that I don't like about the PlayStation 2. For the fact, it's a really faulty system. You could literally have it breaking down in a matter of time, no matter which system you get. I know for a fact, eventually, PS2 systems break down very easily. I've had 4 of them. Right now, I have one that works flawlessly. It skipped on a disc the other day on me, and the disc was in good condition, which kind of tells you that the PS2 is probably going out soon. Could be a year or 2. PS2 systems were made extremely faulty. They were not made to last, especially the fat models. Unless you get the 75,000, like the 79,000 series, like the last series of the big ones, they'll last a lifetime. But the first year editions, or even the first or 2-year editions of the Slims, they didn't really last so long. In fact, even the last year editions of the Slims don't even last that long. The best editions to get of the Slim is later 2004, or between 2004 and 2008. Those are the best editions to get. Anything after that, it's crap. You're not gonna have it that long. You might have it maybe 2 or 3 years, but those ones between late 2004 and 2008, you'll have them maybe 10, 20 years, and they'll work flawlessly. Another thing is the memory cards. Sony initially wanted to just make the PlayStation 2 with only 8 megabytes, and that was the bad thing, because they did not know how many blocks it would take to save up each game. Well, here's the thing. There's a game that I own called NHL 2001, and it takes over 2,000 kilobytes. That's a lot of data on an 8 megabyte memory card. So I only have 14 games on my memory card, and I only have about 2,000 kilobytes left over, which is nothing. I could probably get maybe 5 or 6 more games on that one memory card, and then I have to get another one. That's the only bad thing about that. And then the other thing about it is the controllers. You own controller ports. You only have 2 controller ports. Yeah, it sucks. It really does. Here's the positives about this system. You have PlayStation backwards compatibility. Okay, fantastic. It has backwards compatibility with memory cards, and it has backwards compatibility with the controllers too. And certain games on PlayStation 2 actually use certain PlayStation controllers. You can use a DualShock. Certain games can use the analog controller, and some of them can use the digital control pad, which is really awesome. The other good thing about it had USB ports on it, so you could play Guitar Hero and all sorts of stuff. The other good thing that was a real great thing about it is that it was marketed as a DVD player, which is a big time, and I mean big big time marketing campaign. That's a great marketing key. But people more or less used it for DVD playback than they use for gaming, and that's the reason why the system is so cheap to collect for these days. Number 7, Sega Saturn. One of the most underrated video game systems ever created, if I say so myself. This system is highly expensive to collect for, and the main thing about this system on why it's just so high to collect for is because it came out in 1994 everywhere, pretty much. Almost 95, pretty much almost everywhere also. It only lasts until 98. There's only, I could be wrong, I think there's only about 225 games released in North America. I could be wrong about that. But you have a lot of good franchises on there. Shining Force, Sonic, Panzer Dragoon, Virtual Fighter, Daytona USA, I forgot the name of it, Virtual Cop, House of the Dead. There's just so many. Sega Rally Championship, there you go. There's a lot of fighting games on the system too. You also have Marvel vs. Capcom on there. You have Marvel Superheroes. You have Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. I think Dead or Alive might be on the system. No, it's not. Virtual Fighter's on the system. Of course, Virtual Fighter 2 is the best-selling game. This system is great for many reasons. And one main reason is the reliability of it. The system will last forever. I've never had one break on me. I've had to repair one, and that's because the lens were burned out. And it was one of the first generation systems. And that was released, back in 94? Right now we're in 2019. That's about 25 years later. That's a long time before it broke down. And I fixed it and it works brand new. So it'll probably last another 25 years. But the system is extremely reliable. There's not really any faulty things about it. Now, here's some good things about it. I'm going to give you some bad things about it. The good things about it has any type of media you can pretty much use. You can use a CD-ROM, CDR, CDRW, CDW, CDV, ZDG. You can use any type of pretty much any CD volume on there. It also has a video chip encoder on the back where it has a little battery for system back memory. That's a very, very expensive chip, but it's worth it if you're like CD videos, if you're willing to do those things. The other good thing about it is you can expand the memory for certain games. It had a memory slot in the back of it, which was pretty much right on the main board. Now, here's the good thing about this, and there's a bad thing about it. People thought it was a Genesis slot, and it's not, which we'll get into that later on. With the system, though, it's a great system, has a great amount of arcade hits and original ports. Here's some bad things. It is highly expensive, especially to develop for. The development kits for the system were extremely expensive, and getting games for the system back then were actually kind of cheap. Now they're very expensive. Like Shining Force 3 is about almost $200, as far as I know. Another one that's encased that's hard to find is Panzer Dragoon Saga, and that game is about $800, between $600 to $700. About $400 to $700. That's just used from not complete to complete, and then brand new is like $800 to about almost over $1,200. That's brand new. That's just one game. There are plenty of others on the system that are highly expensive. There's only about 30 cheap games on the Saturn, and most of those are sports games. I mean, and then you have like Daytona USA on there that's cheap, Virtual Fighter, Virtual On, Virtual Racing. Those games are really cheap. But other than that, there's hardly any good cheap games on the system. The other thing about it was the battery backup. It had a battery in there, but it was flash battery. So once it dies, you lose all your saved data, and that really sucked. Here's the other problem, was the controller ports. There was only 2 controller ports on the system. That also sucked. So, also the Sega Saturn can go online, which is good, but it didn't last for a long time. So, number 6, Sega Dreamcast. Probably one of my favorite Sega consoles of all time. It is one of the most successful commercial failure systems besides the Wii U. It's the second most commercially successful failure system. Well, the first one being the Wii U, but this system had a lot of gain on it at launch. It had a lot. And when I mean a lot, it had a lot. It had a lot of backup. It explained what Sega could do. It showed and paved the way for what Sega is today. And there's just a lot of great things about it. A lot of great new franchises put on this system, plus old ones from the Saturn and even the Genesis. You had Sonic, Virtual Fighter, Daytona USA was remade for it, Virtual Racing was remade for it, Sega GT was made on the system, Crazy Taxi was made on the system, Jet Set Radio Future, or Jet Grind Radio, whichever you think. Power Stone was made on the system. Another great fighter on there. That was just so great. Dreamcast was made novelty for having a bunch of fighting games. And of the 252 games released in North America, there's probably about 50 or 60 fighting games released on the system. And I promise you that. You can go from playing Street Fighter, Kingdom Hearts, Virtual Fighter, Mortal Kombat, I think I already said Street Fighter, and Marvel vs. Capcom. I think Tekken, no Tekken wasn't released on it. That was PlayStation 2, or PlayStation at the time. Soul Calibur was released on there as well. There's so many other fighting games on the system. I just can't even tell you how many there are. And there's a bunch of great sports games. So since EA got rid of doing sports games on the Sega Saturn because they dropped it, Sega started making their own games. And let me tell you, them games were awesome. You did not find a bad sports game on the Dreamcast. And people think Madden's good? Okay, hold on. Let me break this down. So people now these days play, let me play NBA Live 20 or let me play Madden 20. Go back and play NFL 2K5 or NFL 2K or NFL 2K1. I guarantee you the graphics might be bad, but the gameplay is just so much more better. I promise you. In fact, if I could, I'd bet money on it, and I'll tell y'all that. It had a lot of great games. It had a lot of potential. Now, here's a couple of bad things about the system. And the first one is the system. The reliability of the system is horrible. It's just like the PlayStation 2. You could have it breaking down at any minute. Launch model units are horrible. They don't last that long. While units that were made back in 1999 or early 2000, those were the best units to get. So, another game that I forgot to add on there was Shenmue, which is pretty much Sega's version of GTA, if you think about it. But the other bad things about the system. I love it, but it's a bad thing, and that is the controller. The controller is just so hard to handle, even though I love it so much. It is a hard to control at all. You have to really, what's the word I'm looking for? You have to have, I guess you could say, like a fingered hand. I'm not saying nothing crippled or anything. You have to have like a fingered hand. What that means is your hands have to be able to hold this controller. And it's like you're having a controller, and then you have like two little sharp edges coming in, pretty much that pretty much fit with you, and then it doesn't. The other bad thing is the cord that's coming from the bottom of the controller. Yeah, there's a little spot on the back of it that's about this big, and you can put the cord on it and just shoop, and there you go. The good thing that I really do like about the system and is the VMU. The VMU is just so good. It's amazing. I love it. I love having the Rumble Pack on the system. Now, one more thing that I don't like about the system is the GD ROMs. I think they should have used GD ROMs was a gigabyte disk. But the thing about it is, I think they should have used a different type of setup, but that's about it. The other bad thing about the system is it did not play DVDs, but it played a bunch of CDs. The other good thing about the system is that the disk drive is an open source. So you could really pretty much burn the games and use an Utopia disk and play games on there. Again, I don't do piracy. I just explain it. So nobody get me wrong on that. Now we're in the top 5. Number 5, Nintendo Wii. Possibly one of my favorite Nintendo systems of all time. It's not my favorite, though. It's one of my favorites. I remember getting a Wii for Christmas back in 2007, and I played the crap out of it. I went from playing probably like 1 hour that day on Christmas Day to like 6 or 7 hours in that one day. And I remember the 3 games I got with it: Wii Sports, Mario Party 8, and Need for Speed Carbon. And me and my sister, we played the crap out of Mario Party 8 as well as Wii Sports. We played the crap out of it. And it's just a great system. Now, it had a lot of great franchises and it lost some too. There was no Star Fox on this system, and there was no Yoshi on the system, which was really, really tough to handle. Now, here's some good things about it, though. It brought back Mario. It brought back Zelda. It brought back Kirby. It brought back Mario Kart, Super Smash Brothers, Pikmin from the GameCube. It brought back Donkey Kong Country. And this was a sequel to Donkey Kong Country 3. Dixie's Double Trouble, sorry. It brought Super Paper Mario, the successor to Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. It brought Mario Strikers Charge, Mario Superstar Baseball. There was no Mario Tennis on there. Actually, there was. Sorry, there was Mario Power Tennis. It was a remake. They also did a lot of remakes on there. With new play controls, Pinkman and Pinkman 2, as well as Mario Power Tennis and Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. I think there was another one on there too. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. There you go. There's another one. I forgot some of them. It had a bunch of great games. It had a lot of potential. It had the Wii series, Wii Sports, Wii Play, Wii Fit, Wii Party, Wii Play Motion. There was just so many great games on the Wii. Now, here's the bad thing about the Wii. It had a crap ton, and I'm talking about a crap ton of shovelware. There are people who have collections of Wii games. I'm talking about 200, 300, 400, hundreds of games. I can guarantee you about a good 200 of those games are nothing but crapware. I promise you that. Like Wii Speak, that's a crapware game. Or Wii Ski. Game Party. I mean, Chicken Shoot. Those are some horrible games. I mean, Game Party was okay, but still. There's a lot of great ones, like Need for Speed Carbon, GoldenEye, the remake, Call of Duty. There's just so many great third-party games up on the system, too, that really make it worthwhile. Now, the bad things about the system. The motion controls. I like it, but I don't like it at the same time. I don't like having, sitting in my chair. Okay, I'm moving my arms. Okay, yeah, let me move my hands. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. I like having a controller. Yeah, you like this? Okay, let me press this button. Yeah, I'm gonna beat you. That's what kind of action I like. I like actions where I can just keep pressing a button on the controller and I'll be okay. Not like a button smasher fighting game, but a good action game without having to. Okay, let me roll out. Let me throw my lasso. Instead, okay, let me keep pressing this button. Okay, this button. Okay. Press this button. All right, there's a lasso for me. It's like having to do more work than what you should be doing. I get it what Nintendo was trying to do, and they did it, and it was innovative as I don't know what, great marketing, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. The second horrible thing on the system is the lens can come very dirty very quickly, and that was a bad thing. The other bad thing about the system was how much system memory the system had, and that was the most horrible thing. It only came with 512 megabytes. That's like over 2,000 blocks of memory. That is nothing. That was horrible. And the last thing about it is the Wii remotes. They drain those batteries so quick. And even getting rechargeable ones, it just drains it so quickly. Now, here's the good things about it. It had pretty much almost full backwards compatibility with the GameCube. It had full backwards compatibility with the United States GameCube games in North America, as well as controllers and most accessories, not all accessories. Now, here's the other thing about that everybody loved about the Wii, and that was the Wii Virtual Console. Wii Virtual Console was just amazing. Just a great, great thing. The first time you could ever download games from anywhere, and you can download them and play them on the Wii. That's like, holy crap. Who doesn't like that? So that was the good thing about the Wii. Number 4, Nintendo GameCube. This is possibly my favorite gaming system of Nintendo, and good reason why. It made a lot of franchise games, or a lot of franchises that you did not see on 64, but you did see greater than. If that makes sense. Yeah, you had Mario, Sonic, you had Mario, Kirby, Zelda, Metroid, Wario. No Yoshi though, unfortunately, and no Dr. Mario neither, which that really sucked. That was on the Wii though, but it's a whole different topic right here. There, and it started with Pinkman on there. Pinkman was the newest one. Technically, for North America, the first time we ever saw Animal Crossing. There was just so many other good games that was released on the GameCube, and this was the first time ever where Mario Party games, well, sort of were bad, but not really, where the multiplayer was a lot of fun. Not saying the N64 games weren't, but these were a lot of fun. And the other good thing about the system was Mario Kart and Smash Brothers. If you had those games, as well as Super Mario Sunshine and Luigi's Mansion, you pretty much had the complete games that you wanted. Metroid Prime was a great game. Now, the GameCube, in what I recall, it was known as Nintendo's most mature system. It's kind of weird, huh? The thing about it is, yeah, the N64, you had Turok, and you had GoldenEye, you had Conker's Bad Fur Day. Okay, you had Resident Evil. Okay, that's good to know. GameCube went. N64 was right here. GameCube went like right there. And GameCube has Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, Eternal Darkness, Gist. Technically not a rated M game, but it was a more of a mature game, Metroid Prime. Also, not a rated M game, but more of a mature game, Twilight Princess, which was also released on the Wii. It's technically a GameCube game. But there was a lot of mature games that were released on the GameCube. And that's the reason why it's called the Nintendo's mature system. And the best, not just the best selling one out of those, but the greatest one out of any of those games, of the mature one, is always going to be Resident Evil 4. They recreated the original Resident Evil on the system. And boy, if it wasn't crazy. There was also Time Splitters on the system too. Like I said, it was the most mature rated system on Nintendo's library of any game systems or any games. Like the Wii had a good amount of mature games. The Wii U didn't really have anything. The Switch now is coming up with a bunch of mature games, but I don't think it will ever beat out the GameCubes. Now, here's some good things and some bad things. It had a good quality library. It was a bigger library than the N64. They started with discs on the system, which was a good thing. And the capacity on the memory cards, phenomenal. Great. Here's the bad thing about the system. The games only were on 1.5 discs. So 1.5 gigabyte discs. And that's not a lot of memory. So that's a horrible amount of memory on the discs. So sometimes you have games that take up 2 to 3 discs. Also, the thing about the GameCube is it's not reliable. You could have a GameCube dying I'd probably say about a good 2 or 3 years. It's better off to just get a backwards compatible Wii. And that's just my opinion. Also, the other thing about the GameCube now these days is it's highly expensive to collect for. I have seen Super Smash Bros. Go as high, brand new, as high as $200. I have seen it go used caseless for about $45, and I've seen it go used with the case for about $65. The most expensive game that I probably have seen on there as a first-party game, and it's probably going to end up being Twilight Princess, because it didn't sell that. It sold crazy on the GameCube. It sold, about like 1.36 million copies? There's a lot of copies out there. It's just it's in high demand. The controllers, phenomenal. Great. Hardly any online support, which really sucked. And that's really the only bad thing about the system, really, was the online support. And just the fact that it just didn't sell. But it was a really, really good system. All right, we have our top 3. Number 3, Sega Genesis. This is my favorite Sega system. There's just so many great franchise games that's released on the system. And it had a lot of arcade hits, had a lot of sports games. It had a lot of great games on the system, and it was just so great. As of different franchises on it, you started with Sonic on it, Streets of Rage. It had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Hyperstone Heist. You had Shinobi. You had Madden 94, NHL 94, which was an amazing 2 sports games on there. If you had Virtual Racing, Virtual On, oh man, I could keep going and going. Castlevania Bloodlines, Mutant League Football, Mutant League Hockey. I mean, I'm the Virtual Fighter 2. I mean, I could just keep going on and on and on and on, but I'm not. There's just so many amount of great games that's been released upon the system. And that's the one thing that I like about the Sega Genesis. Now, here's a lot of bad things I hate about the Genesis. First of all, is there's so many different types of Genesis consoles. You could get from getting the first 3 originals to getting clone systems to getting a handheld clone. It's just so many, you just don't know what to choose from. The other bad thing that I think about the Genesis, and I seriously think that they should have done it, and despite having an expansion port, even though Sega could connect online with a Sega channel, I still think it should have had an online thing for most of its games, and it did not, which was really horrible. I really do wish they could have created that at that time. Which, speak about the Sega Channel was a type of modem or type of cartridge you plug right into your console, and you would plug like your TV line or something, and it would reach some internet site or some. It would reach some place at Sega. It would reach someplace at Sega. And that was the major good thing. You would download a game from a list of ROMs. And once you're done playing that ROM, it would delete it and you play another one. Too bad you couldn't save the games though. There's only 2 controller ports, which was a novel at that time. It had 2 different kinds of controllers. It had a 3-button controller, which was ABC, or you had a 6-button controller, ABC, XYZ. And the 6-button controller is considered the best controller from Sega. I highly think it is. But that's just me. I still think it's possibly one of the greatest controllers ever. It's one of my favorite systems. Now, here's the one thing I don't like about the system, and that's having to have the add-ons with the Sega CD, Sega 32X, and the Power Base converter. From the early it was released in 1989, late 90s, or late 80s, early 90s. With the system, the Power Base converter didn't even require no power supply. It was just a type of add-on where you could play Sega Master System games, and the Genesis had all of the Sega Master System hardware inside the Genesis, and the original one. And you just connect it, and you could play Sega Master System games. Now, there's only one big flaw that's and you can probably go see this on Adam Krolik's Genesis consoles on his YouTube channel, where it did not have a Genesis slot, and that is probably one of the worst things about that. And that is the most horrible thing about the system. But other than that, it had great add-ons like the Sega CD and 32X. With the 32X, it died out really quickly due to the launch of the Sega Saturn, and Sega CD sold about 2 million. Its most popular game on there was Sonic CD, which is considered by most fans to be one of the greatest games ever made, even in the Sonic franchise. I still think Sonic 2 is my favorite, though. All right, so number 2, Xbox 360. Okay, so the Xbox 360. what can I say about the Xbox 360 that already hasn't been said, or that already has been said? It's a great gaming console. It defined high definition. It defined Xbox Live. It defined downloadable content. It defined installing your games. It defined having consoles with a hard drive without a memory card. It really defined a bunch of stuff. It defined having a console for the first time with just wireless controllers. It really defined a lot of things. And that was the good thing about the 360. 360 originally launched in 2005 and it discontinued in 2014. Yeah. All right. So we have a lot of good franchises on here. You have Forza, Gears of War, you have Project Gotham Racing, Halo, of course, Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey. There's some Final Fantasy, Need for Speed, Burnout, Borderlands, Call of Duty. Just so many great different franchises. A bunch of fighting games, Tekken, Soul Calibur, Marvel vs. Capcom, Mortal Kombat. So many other great games up on the system. Now, there's a lot of flaws to the system. There's a lot of great things about it. And I've already mentioned the great things. So let's go with the flaws. First of all, this system only played DVDs while the PS3 played Blu-rays. Second of all, the system was extremely unreliable, especially the first batches of the system until 2007 or 2008, where you would get the Red Ring of Death. Most of the time it was a general hardware failure. You send your console out and you get one back. I have never had it yet. So, points for me. The other bad thing was the controllers. The controllers, the make of it and the use of it, phenomenal. Greatest controller ever. But it eats up your battery so fast. And that's one thing I hated about the system. One thing I did like about the Xbox 360 is it did it right with backwards compatibility. But the only bad thing was, even though you put the disc in, it was read by emulation. And that was horrible. You can also download games, have Xbox Live Arcade, and download Xbox Originals as well. So that was a good novelty about the Xbox 360. It also could have different type of video outputs. You could go from playing with AV, which was standard, component, which is pretty much the best thing of RGB, and the next thing up was HDMI. Launch models did not have it, but they had a converter point of it where you could actually use the HDMI. The other thing was the original didn't come with Wi-Fi. You actually had to get a network adapter. With the new ones in, with the newer systems, with the S and the E, it has Wi-Fi capabilities already built in and a redefined motherboard. Okay. Let me go over some honorable mentions real quick. And I'm going over 4 systems. I'm not going to talk like I've been talking about these. It's just going to be a small brief. Super Nintendo, NES, PlayStation 3, and Wii U. Super Nintendo. Never really got to play it that much as a child. Only time I really played it was on the Wii Virtual Console or playing on the Wii U, really. And it was just a system I really never got into, really. It's considered one of Nintendo's greatest systems due to its first-party lineup, but that's about it. The Wii U. I never really got to play the Wii U that much. It's a great system, but it's not the most fantastic one. I did enjoy it, but it's just not my cup of tea. I think the original Wii was way better than the NES. It's the same way as the Super Nintendo. I never really played it that much. I have owned a clone version of it, never got to own the original. And I have played on Virtual Console as well on the Wii, and it's considered one of the greatest gaming systems of all time that got the video game crash out of 1983, which it really did. But just not my cup of tea from back then. And PlayStation 3, I've owned PlayStation 3 multiple times. It was one of my biggest consoles with the biggest library of ever, over 50 games. But here's the thing, it's not my cup of tea when it comes to playing certain franchises that I can get better on Xbox. Especially Call of Duty, Burnout, and fighting games, as well as mostly third-party games. That is the number one bad thing about that system. The good thing about it is the amount of first-party games that the system has, but that's really about it. Okay. And our number one, this is probably going to be a shocker. Number one, the original Xbox. This is possibly my favorite system of all time. Besides PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, Genesis, and GameCube. Now, Xbox did a lot of things right that Sony couldn't do. Had a higher CPU, higher GPU, had a higher type performance on the main board, and it did a lot correct. It did online marvelously with Xbox Live. It did the 4 controller ports compared to Sony's only 2 controller ports. It eliminated memory cards with a hard drive. It also made the point where you could actually burn your CD and put it onto the hard drive so you could play music. And in the games, you could do that, which was really awesome. Now, the other good thing about the system is that every single console you had of the original Xbox had an internal power supply. With the original PS2, it had one. There's only 1 or 2 models of the Slim that had an internal power supply, while most of them had an external power supply. The controllers were just awesome. They were bulky, but they were nice. You have the big old Duke. Yeah, the Duke. Yeah, I think we all know about that. The Duke controller. It's a really, really good controller. It's big. It's too big for me. I've played with my hands. The first time I played with it was actually about a couple of months ago, and it was about this big. And I was like, wow, this thing is huge. Okay, I need the S controller. And that was the first thing on my mind. Like, I need the S controller. This controller sucks. Okay. I don't like it. It's too big. But I tried it out, and it was just so big. Like, oh my gosh, this controller is huge. So I played with the S controller, and I absolutely enjoyed it. Now, for games, there's a lot of game franchises on the system. Dead or Alive, Halo, of course, Forza, Project Gotham Racing, Conquer Live and Reloaded, which was a remake pretty much, WWF Raw. You had a good amount of survival horror games on the system. Most people consider this the second Dreamcast because it had a lot of Sega franchises from Dreamcast onto it. Jet Set Radio Future, Sega GT, Outrun. Panzer Dragoon Orta, there we go, I forgot that. And I know I'm missing one. Oh yeah, one of my favorite games of all time, Shenmue 2. There's just so many great amounts of games that was released up on the system. And like, oh my, it was just amazing. Phantasy Star Online, there's another one. I forgot to add that one in there too. Now, the bad things about the system. It was huge. It was very heavy. It was about 8 to 12 pounds. It was very bulky, very big. The first edition of the systems, the first batch of the systems, did not last a long time. They might have lasted maybe a couple of months, maybe up to a year, because they were using something called a Thomson drive. And then they eventually switched to a Panasonic or a different type of drive, disk drive in there, and it really worked out really well. The other bad thing is you couldn't just watch DVDs right out the box. You had to have the DVD kit, which really sucked. But it's actually pretty good for what it is. That's really the only bad things about the system. Oh yeah, the other bad thing about the system is there's not many RPGs up on the system. There's only to me, 5 good RPGs on the system. And that is Jade Empire, Morrowind. I don't like the Star Wars games on there. Metal Dungeon, Lord of the Rings, The Third Age, and what was the other one? Oh yeah, Shenmue 2. So those are the 5 RPGs I like on the system, but it also has a lot of great action games, a lot of good platformers, a lot of good shooters on there, especially Halo. Without a doubt, this is possibly my favorite gaming system of all time. Tell me what your favorite gaming console is. Write it down in the comments, post on my Facebook page. Thanks, everybody.